Starting off with the Angels, and I think it makes sense for them to trade Taylor Ward. With all the injuries Mike Trout has had over the years, it made a lot of sense to move him to the DH role more often, but then they traded for Jorge Soler, so there went that. Now, the next best move would be to move him to a less demanding outfield spot out in left field. Now, to do this, they're going to have to move Taylor Ward, who is coming off a pretty solid season, and he can match lefties. I say move him in need of an outfield bat, and they can get some pitching in return. Teams like the Royals, Padres, or maybe even the Reds could make some sense. After Jose Abreu turned out to be a bust, the Astros have had a hole at first base, but one guy out there who's been pretty solid over the last few seasons is Yandy Diaz. Now, if the Astros end up not being able to bring back Alex Bregman, Yandy would be a very reliable bat to replace him in the lineup, considering he's averaged an 836 OPS over the last 3 seasons, and he might be able to get a little bit of boost in power with the short porch in Houston. For the A's, I have Brent Rooker, but I do think there's a chance they hang on to him because, well, he's good, and he's also under club control for the next 3 seasons, and I think the A's are about to get back into a competitive window with all the young talent they have coming up. However, I'll leave the door open of something happening because teams are always looking to add good bats, and if a team out there offers something the A's can't refuse, then maybe he could be on the move. The Blue Jays are looking to make some upgrades this offseason, and one area they could improve is third base. Now, while Ernie Clement did provide some okay production this year, he has the ability to move to other positions, and the Blue Jays would be gaining one of the premier defenders in the game in Nolan Arenado. Now, Arenado's numbers have dipped over the last couple of years, but the Blue Jays have done pretty well over the last few years, getting players back on track offensively, including Marcus Semien. Remember, they had him for a year, and then he got a massive deal with the Rangers, and Matt Chapman. They got him going a little bit offensively. Now, perhaps they could do the same thing with Arenado, and they do have plenty of money, so taking on his contract, especially if the Cardinals eat some of it, shouldn't be too much of a burden. After signing late in spring training last year, Jordan Montgomery went on to have a disastrous season with the D-backs this year, which even led to their owner, Ken Kendrick, saying the signing was a big mistake. Now, when it comes to Alex Anthopoulos, he hasn't been very shy when it comes to taking on bad contracts in the past, including taking on the not-so-great-looking contract at the time with Chris Sale, and he just went on to win his first ever Cy Young. They even got a career year out of Reynaldo Lopez this year. After signing him last offseason, he had a lot of ups and downs in his career, going back and forth between the rotation and the bullpen. Now, with Max Fried most likely on his way out, a veteran like Jordan Montgomery could be a good buy low move. While the Brewers are coming off a division championship, the reality is they're still a small market team, and with closer Devin Williams coming up on free agency next year, it might be wise to move him now while he still has good value. Now, he did miss a lot of time this year with a back injury, but he put up some great numbers. 22 games is a small sample size, but ERA at 1.25, FIP at a 2.06, over 15 strikeouts per 9. Devin Williams, when healthy, is still one of the best closers in the game. I say move him now, get back some young, cost-controlled pieces in return. I think a team like the Blue Jays could make a lot of sense. They could use some more stuff in their bullpen and just use an overall improvement with the bullpen, considering they ranked dead last in Fangraph wins above replacement last year. Sticking with the closers here, and I think the Cardinals should trade Ryan Helsley. While the Cardinals aren't exactly a small market team, they are looking to cut some payroll this offseason and add some young talent at the same time. Now, with Helsley, he's scheduled to get a nice pay raise after leading the major leagues this year in saves, as well as going into his walk year. I think it makes some sense to move him now while his value is still high. Last offseason, Cubs fans were wondering if they were going to bring back Cody Bellinger in free agency, but now it seems like most Cubs fans are okay with him being elsewhere next season. Now, this isn't surprising considering his numbers took a good dip this year, and the Cubs could use a bit more flexibility in their lineup with Peter Crow-Armstrong and Michael Busch in center field and first base. Now, they would have to eat some of the contract to move him. He is getting paid a pretty penny here, but I think it would be worth it, and then they can go after someone else for right field like Anthony Santander or maybe even Teoscar Hernandez. The Diamondbacks could use a bit more offense in center field since Alek Thomas hasn't really been able to find his footing at the major league level, even after being considered a top prospect not too long ago. However, he still has some pretty good value because of the ceiling he has, along with the club control he carries. I say the Diamondbacks use his value while it's still somewhat high, and they could use him to help improve other parts of the team. The Dodgers are in a good spot coming off a World Series title, but with Mookie Betts looking to go back to the infield, it could make some sense to move Gavin Lux. Now, Mookie could play shortstop and Lux could play second, but Mookie had a tough time at shortstop last year, and I think second base would be a better fit for him. They could go onto the open market and sign a shortstop like Willy Adames, who Andrew Friedman has connections with from their Rays days, or they can go after a cheaper option option like Ha-Seong Kim, or they could possibly give one of their top prospects, shortstop Alex Freeland, a shot there at some point next year. Either way, I could see teams needing infielders being interested in Gavin Lux. While Lamont Wade Jr. did a good job of getting on base this past year, the Giants could use a bit more pop in the lineup, and he is coming up on free agency. Now, you won't get much for Lamont Wade Jr. at this point, but he has been pretty productive over the last few years, and you could maybe use him to land a decent reliever, or maybe something for the back end of the rotation, especially with Blake Snell probably heading elsewhere this offseason. With the Guardians being a small market team, they always need to look ahead, and with Josh Naylor only 1 year away from free agency, and one of their top prospects, first baseman Kyle Manzardo, looking for playing time, a good bat like Naylor coming off a 31 home run season could help bring back something to help with other areas of the team. Nico Horner did just get elbow surgery, but he shouldn't miss too much time in 2025, and I think he would be a perfect fit for the Seattle Mariners. Now, they struggled last season with getting on base and strikeouts, but I think a high contact, low strikeout guy like Nico Horner would fit perfectly, especially after they just moved on from Jorge Polanco. The Marlins sold off a couple players at the deadline, but they still have a few more in Sandy Alcantara, Jesus Luzardo, and Jake Berger. Now, they've already told Alcantara that he'll be with the team on opening day, which makes sense since he's coming off Tommy John surgery, and Luzardo missed a lot of time this past year with a back injury. Now, I could maybe see them moving Jesus Luzardo because he does have a good track record from just a couple of years ago, and a back injury is definitely better than an arm injury. Now, I can see Alcantara staying with the team to restore his value, and maybe he gets moved at the deadline. But as for Jake Berger, I mean, you got a power bat here, had 29 home runs this past year with a 460 slugging. I think a lot of teams out there would love to add a power bat like that, especially since he has 4 more seasons of club control. I see the Mets being more active in free agency this offseason. Now, I could see them making trades, but I wonder how far they're willing to go, considering they've just recently built their farm system back up. Now, I could see a cheaper option like Zach Littell on the Rays, who is coming off a pretty solid season, and he would be a good arm at the back of the rotation for them, something the Mets really could use, especially after losing 3 of their starters to free agency. Howdy, everyone. Just want to take a quick break and shout out today's sponsor, and that's Odds Jam. Now, when it comes to my predictions on this channel, they're pretty risky because, more often than not, they're wrong. But what if you could make risk-free profits in sports betting? This may sound too good to be true, but let me explain. The sports betting market in the US is so fragmented, with each book setting their own odds. This means there are so many opportunities to profit when 2 books get out of sync. You can bet both sides, over on one book, under on another, and lock in a risk-free profit. This strategy is called arbitrage, and it's the core of OddsJam. OddsJam scans hundreds of sports books in real time to find these bets, helping thousands of bettors earn tens of thousands of dollars every single month. Look at the results yourself, and here's the best part: you can try it for free. OddsJam offers a 7-day risk-free trial, giving you access to all of its data-driven tools, including the arbitrage and positive EV finder. If you don't love it, cancel with one click. There's no strings attached. If you're ready to get started, use the promo code HYDE for 35% off your first month after the free trial. Don't miss out on making smarter, risk-free bets with OddsJam today. The Nationals are about to enter a competitive window, but they lack a good option at first base. Now, someone like Pete Alonso or Christian Walker could make some sense for them, but if they don't land one of those guys, why not Ryan Mountcastle? Now, the Orioles are looking to clear some space for some of their up-and-coming prospects. Someone like Kobe Mayo could slide in at first base, and Mountcastle has some pretty good power, but he's been limited by the deep left field wall in Baltimore, and I think his power would translate a lot better in Washington. I do wonder if the White Sox would move Luis Robert this offseason, but if they run him back out in 2025 and he gets hurt again, then his value is only going to get lower, so moving him now could help avoid that risk. Now, the Orioles could definitely use another right-handed bat in that lineup. They got a lot of lefties in that lineup, and with Anthony Santander heading into free agency, and who knows if he comes back, I think someone like Luis Robert, if healthy, would be a huge boost for the lineup. He would also be cheaper than Anthony Santander. He's on a pretty team-friendly deal. He's got a couple options in 2026 and 2027, and Cedric Mullins is coming up on free agency next year. Maybe they could move Mullins in a separate deal, and then Luis Robert Jr. can be your center fielder. While Luis Arraez did help the Padres this year, he's projected to make almost $15 million in 2025. Now, with the Padres being more cautious with payroll over the last year or so, I could see them moving him to free up some space in their infield and possibly go after a cheaper alternative like Carlos Santana for first base, or maybe even second base if Ha-Seong Kim doesn't return. You could have Bogarts go back to shortstop, and Cronenworth could play first. The Phillies are looking to shake things up this offseason, and one guy I wonder if they would like to move is Nick Castellanos. He's been terrible defensively in right field, and he didn't provide much with the bat this year, only a 105 WRC+. That's just a little bit above league average. However, if he becomes a DH somewhere, I think he could provide some pretty good value. He wouldn't have to worry about playing in the field. He can just focus on the bat. Now, the Phillies really need to improve their defense out there. I say they eat some of that contract and they move on. The Pirates desperately need to upgrade the offense, and since Bob Nutting never wants to spend any money in free agency, their best bet could be the trade market, and I wonder if someone like Nathaniel Lowe on the Rangers could be available. His power has dipped a little bit in the last couple of seasons, but he's still a productive hitter. Had a 121 WRC+ this year, had a 361 on base. I still think he's a pretty solid bat. Now, I think you could use him to help bring back some pitching. The Pirates got some pitching over there that maybe they could deal. The Rangers could really use some pitching, and the Rangers also have Justin Foscue, who could take over at first base. Speaking of the Rangers, they need to add some arms to the bullpen, and a good one out there is Pete Fairbanks on the Rays. Now, the Rays sold off some players at this year's deadline, but one guy who was getting interest and ended up staying was Pete Fairbanks. Now, he's on a 3-year deal. It's up after this year. There is a club option for 2026. It's an affordable contract, which is something the Rangers probably would like, considering all the TV money issues they've had over the last year. Sticking with the Rays here, and another guy who's solid when healthy that can help many teams out there is Brandon Lowe. Now, he's dealt with a couple of injuries over the last couple of years, but he's hit over 20 homers in each of the last 2 seasons, and many teams out there could use that, especially one that's on a team-friendly deal like Brandon Lowe. Simply put, the Red Sox need top-of-the-rotation guys. Even though they got a breakout year from Tanner Houck, they could also use a lefty in the rotation, and one lefty out there they're set up perfectly for, in my opinion, is Garrett Crochet. Now, the White Sox want young position players, and the Red Sox have plenty of those, both at the major and minor league levels. The Reds had a lot of injuries this year, including second baseman Matt McClain, but he should be back in 25, and a good bat like Jonathan India should be expendable. Now, he had his best season this past year since his rookie season, and he would be a solid bat and a good clubhouse guy for a lot of teams out there. With Adale Amador knocking on the door for the major leagues and Ezekiel Tovar planted firmly at shortstop, there's no need for the Rockies to hang on to Brendan Rodgers. Now, he hasn't fully found his footing at the major league level, but he has a little bit of pop, and he gets the job done at second base. He should be useful to some teams out there looking for some infield depth. According to reports out there, the Phillies have been concerned with Alec Boehm's maturity and attitude in the last couple of years. They're looking to shake things up, and I think Boehm would be a great bat for the Kansas City Royals. They had their ups and downs this year, but they got guys like Bobby Witt Jr., Vinny Pasquantino. Add Alec Boehm to that, I think that's pretty solid. The Tigers ran with what was called the chaos pitching staff this year, but I think they'll be looking to add a bit more stability for 2025. Now, one guy I mentioned earlier that could be available is Jesus Luzardo. He's coming off a back injury, but had a great season in 2023, and he still has great stuff, has some of the best stuff going back the last couple of years. I can see pitching coach Chris Fetter loving the idea of having a guy like Luzardo. The Twins could be looking to cut some payroll this offseason, and with Christian Vasquez making $10 million this coming season, basically being a backup catcher to Ryan Jeffers, I say eat some of the salary and move him to a team that could use some improvement defensively at catcher. There's no need for the White Sox to hang on to Andrew Vaughn at this point as they look to complete their fire sale. Vaughn never really lived up to the hype with the White Sox after being a high draft pick for them not too long ago, but he can provide some value to other teams out there that need to improve against left-handed pitching. And last but not least, and I mentioned him earlier, but I think Ryan Helsley would be a great fit for the Yankees. Sure, Luke Weaver did a phenomenal job this year after replacing Clay Holmes as the closer, but because he lacks the track record, I think it would make a lot of sense for the Yankees to get a bona fide option like Ryan Helsley. The Yankees also ranked pretty low in velocity with their bullpen this year, and Helsley, who averages around 100 miles per hour on his fastball, would be a perfect fit in my opinion. But everyone, those are my thoughts. Tell me your thoughts down below in the comments. What trades would you like to see this offseason? Let me know. But everyone, that's all I got for right now. If you're kind of the way out, hit that like button for me, subscribe if you're new, and I'll talk to you next time.